Okay, we are at the top of the hour and we're going to get started today. I expect that others will join along the way. We are recording and we're going to get underway. My name is Wendy Bazilian and I'll be facilitating today's webinar, Bread and Rolls, Strengthening Dough Performance and Consistency. This is the first session of the Benexia and Baking Innovation webinar series. So I'm delighted to have you here. Thank you for joining. And I'm going to share my screen and kick us off with some conversational points, and then we will dive into the actual reason that you're here is to hear from our wonderful presenters. As I mentioned, this is Bread and Rolls, Strengthening Dough Performance and Consistency. And I want to thank you for joining us today. We're delighted to have participants representing a wide range of companies, disciplines, and regions across bakery and the food industry. And before we begin, I just want a few housekeeping notes, as we always do. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and where you're joining from. That's always a good thing to share, and you may find some colleagues you've interacted with and other new friends as well. And please use the chat to add questions that you may have throughout the discussion. We'll do our best to address as many as possible during the session today and follow up afterward on any that we don't have time for today. And to help ensure the best experience for everyone, you should be muted already, but if you are not, please do so now. And I would encourage you just during the session, because we're recording and you might turn off your video. But when we come back to Q&A, I always encourage you to come on video, and we can also invite you to come on microphone if you'd like to voice a question verbally as well. So before we dive into today's discussion, I wanted just to briefly share the broader series. Today's session focuses specifically on breads and rolls and the challenges of delivering strong dough performance and consistency while meeting the growing expectations placed on today's bakery products. Later this summer, we'll expand the conversation to flatbreads and tortillas, followed by cookies and sweet baked goods for a sweet treat at the end. Each category, of course, presents its own technical challenges, but the larger opportunity remains the same. Finding ingredient solutions that can support product performance, nutrition, operational realities, and evolving consumer expectations, all of those things we'll talk about. And that's really the common thread that connects all three sessions. And we hope you'll join for each. Before we get into specific formulation strategies, I think it's helpful to take a look at the broader reality facing bakery manufacturers today. When we look here, what we see and what strikes me, and perhaps you, is that none of these priorities are optional anymore. Consumers want more from the foods they buy, manufacturers are being asked to deliver more, and the expectations placed on ingredients continue to grow as well. So whether you're coming at this from a product development, formulation, nutrition, marketing, or operations vantage, everyone seems to be trying to solve for more than one thing at a time. And ultimately, all of those priorities have to come together in a product that performs well, meets consumer expectations, and earns a place in the shopping cart and effectively in our mouths and our bodies, because we want it to taste great too. And that's what I think makes today's conversation so interesting, and really the lens that we'll use throughout today. What also strikes me about this space, and I love thinking about convergences and where trends intersect, but it's the list of expectations keeps growing. Consumers want more products that taste great, that support their health goals, contain recognizable ingredients, and increasingly align with their values as well. Brands are looking for more meaningful nutrition stories and opportunities for differentiation. Manufacturers need more ingredients that perform consistently, they process reliably, and they work within the realities of commercial production, which we'll talk in detail about. And then product developers are often right in the middle of it, trying to bring all of these somehow together into a single space. It's no small task when we think about it, and we're not talking about solving one problem. So we can sort of say with confidence that the most successful solutions aren't ones that maximize a single attribute. They're ones that help bridge gaps between the competing priorities. I'd be remiss. I'm coming from my space, which is nutrition communications and PR, and I'm a doctor of public health and nutrition. Not talking about fiber when we talk about bakery. It has gone from being a nutrient that was once overlooked to one of the most talked about topics in nutrition today. And really, this is for a good reason. And I'm happy to report it. We continue to learn more about the role of fiber in digestive health. This is the research, gut health, cardiometabolic health, blood sugar management, satiety, and overall health and health outcomes. And yet, despite growing awareness and decades, I'm telling you, decades of public health recommendations on the same, only about 1 in 20 Americans meet the daily fiber recommendations. And the numbers are staggering across the globe. I'm pointing to the most recent that we have for North America. And when you think about that, it's a pretty remarkable gap. At the same time, bakery products are already part of consumers' everyday eating patterns. So rather than asking consumers to completely change how they eat to meet some of these goals, there is an opportunity to help close the gap through the foods they already are purchasing and enjoying. And that's one reason why ingredients such as chia have attracted growing interest, I think, from both nutrition and formulation perspectives. So where does chia fit in all of this? One of the reasons chia has attracted so much interest is that it doesn't contribute just to the one area. Its functionality, its nutrition, its consumer trends all loop together. Too often an ingredient is being or historically evaluated for a single benefit that's being sought. Maybe it's the nutrition story or the functionality solution, or maybe helping to address a consumer need or trend. But chia is interesting because it has the potential to contribute across all of these. From a functionality perspective that both Richard and Belén, our speakers today, will share, it can support water absorption, moisture management, texture, and the clean label formulation priorities. From a nutrition perspective, it contributes an excellent source of fiber, complete plant protein, excellent omega-3s, and key minerals. And from a market perspective, it aligns with several trends that contribute to influencing product development, including clean label, plant-based nutrition, and sustainability. And that's one reason that chia, and our speakers will share more on this, continues to generate interest across the category. So before I introduce our speakers, which is what comes next, I want to briefly connect the idea back to Benexia. One of the things that makes Benexia quite unique is its singular focus on chia seed and the breadth of ingredient solutions that come from a single seed. And depending on the application, that could include the cold-pressed chia oil, chia fiber, the chia protein, each bringing different nutritional and functional characteristics to the table. And it's a good example also on how innovation today is about getting more value, more functionality, and more opportunity from the same agricultural ingredient. And that's the theme you'll hear throughout today. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you our esteemed speakers for today that I'm so happy to have on board and will be with us throughout the series. Richard Charpentier is the CEO of Baking Innovation and brings extensive expertise in bakery formulation, process optimization, and commercial product development. And Belén Gallo is the key account manager for EMEA at Benexia and works closely with customers and innovation teams to translate ingredient innovation into practical product solutions. Together, they bring expertise in both the realities of bakery formulation and the ingredient innovations that are happening in the space today. You'll find their full biographies in the chat. And Richard and Belén, welcome. We're going to kick off some questions here. I'm so grateful to have you today. I'm going to take myself off share screen so that we can see your faces and your remarks firsthand. Thank you so much.
Hello, Wendy. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here.
Yes. Well, we're so grateful for your time today. So in order to maximize our time together, I want to start with a big picture question. Bakers today are being asked to do a lot, as I just sort of shared, and you're doing each day in, day out with your clients and customers, improving nutrition, simplifying ingredients statements, maintaining consistency, controlling costs, and still delivering products that perform, that consumers love and that probably, will go gangbusters in the marketplace. From both of your perspectives, I'm curious, what are some of the biggest formulation challenges that you're seeing right now? And I'll kick it off with Belén, and then Richard, please chime in as well. So what are some of the biggest formulation challenges you're seeing right now?
Yeah, well, the first that comes to my mind, I would say, is clean label for sure. I frequently receive inquiries from customers seeking natural alternatives to replace artificial ingredients. And I don't know your opinion, Richard, but I believe a clean label is a challenge in itself, trying to maintain or even improve a product feature or functionality with a restricted options of ingredients. It is definitely a major hurdle.
I'll let you, Wendy. Should I jump in or?
Jump on in. Yeah, absolutely. Richard, jump on in. And I'd love to hear you. Let's make this a conversation between us, and I can help create the flow and add some banter in between. But absolutely.
Perfect. Well, first of all, hi everyone, and for those who have seen my articles, anything, I'm really excited to be part of that conversation. So hopefully we make it fun and educational for everyone on the line. So, as your question, what are the biggest trends as you were seeing? Correct?
Yes, and some of the formulation challenges, the trends and challenges that you're seeing in your space right now in bakery innovation.
No, I do. And again, baking innovation was started for innovation. So we spend our time working with ingredients and learning how to use ingredients. So for us, clean label has been something that's moved for the last, I think, 20 years, probably more, but it's small. We have an issue, which is the challenges we're facing is a high demand for products, and everybody's trying to run very fast. And now, to Belén's question, how do we go back to doing more clean label and high speed? And I think clean label is great, and again, tying up to chia as sort of the focus ingredient, what you can do with the unexpected. And to me, challenges of clean label also come as a backstory of what I've learned, how remarkable of an ingredient, functional ingredient, could do to gluten-free. But now, and I've been saying for years, the world to solve challenges through clean label is knowing how the ingredients work. So how do we do it? So, but I think it's a great point. It's definitely the clean label. How do you generate and efficiency, which are sort of tied together as we're talking about speed versus clean label. How do you find that happy medium?
Yeah, what an interesting, it's an intersection of two sort of differentiators that makes you become a specialist, not only in your field, but in how the innovation pipeline works, certainly. And it's interesting, the evolution of like the clean label concept. Consumers seek it, but they don't necessarily say clean label, but you get what they mean when they're seeking, recognizable ingredients. And it's interesting how it's evolved, and different ingredients, come in, not in fashion, but they ladder up to or meet a certain criteria, like gluten-free or different words even within the ingredient space. So it's not simply about adding ingredients, then, is what I'm hearing too, but it's about maintaining the performance of the entire system, including the velocity to market. Question, Richard. Then, when bakers or when you're evaluating a new ingredient, what are some of the first things that needs to be thought about, or what do you worry about or consider in evaluating new ingredients in your space?
Well, and I'm laughing because I hear the question from my customers who what they worry about is the cost, and I always say, worry about what the value of the product of what it will provide to your end results, meaning if you're making a bagel, a tortilla, versus just looking at cost per pound of a product, where in the first place, it's innovative. So let's look at the potential and not just the cost. So it's something that I hope the people will understand, but it's true. A lot of people worry about the cost, and I think we should be more worried about solving solutions to problems with new ingredients. And again, baking innovation, we try it, we test it, and I'm encouraging other people to do the same. Think about what we can do with newer ingredients tomorrow.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with Richard. Well, from a supplier perspective, of course, I see apart from the cost, right, the reliability. I mean, every customer looks for reliability as one of the main aspects when they're searching or scouting an ingredient, to be able to offer quality, consistency, guarantees for them to, of course, understand that your product will be the best option for their problem, but also that you're able to support them throughout the process. That's also a thing to keep in mind when choosing the ingredients, for sure. And that will make a difference.
Exactly.
It's so interesting because maybe, before anyone gets excited about, say, nutrition, even if they enter in that way, or the cost, the product has to work in the bakery, environment. So I really like the value proposition that you suggested, Richard and Belén, that sort of the ingredient functionality has to literally work there as well. Belén, where does chia fit into this conversation? Sort of, set us up. I gave a mini preview of where from my work with Benexia and over the years where I see it. But what problems can chia and your ingredient solutions help to address in bread and roll applications specifically?
Well, their chia fiber, in particularly, from all of our portfolio, has amazing advantages for bakery applications. We often receive feedback from clients who are very happy and surprised about how the ingredient performs in terms of functionality, nutrition as well, and how consistent it is from batch to batch. That's something that bakers very appreciate. We know that in bakery, the source of an ingredient impacts directly the end product. So when it comes to chia, as a natural ingredient that a customer don't expect to find a natural solution that will perform consistent over time, but also that is able to execute a similar functionality as an artificial ingredient or as a highly processed fiber, as we're seeing right now that they're using. So they're very much surprised about that. I think chia is not very well known in terms of all the functionalities, the rheological properties and all of that. So it's interesting that customers are looking to find, for example, a fiber, but they ended up discovering so much functionalities and advantages that they can even include in other references. So for bakers particularly, I believe, and what I've seen from my experience as well, is that they're very, very positive surprised with the ingredient. They have a lot to explore from chia fiber 435, which is the fiber concentrate from chia.
And is that similar to what you experienced, Richard, or how does chia contribute to dough performance, to our esteemed audience, but also to layperson? How can we understand that better?
Yeah, and as I'm thinking, we're right in the midst for bakers. For those who are here, thank you. We're in the midst of the bun season, so everybody's busy producing more to make sure we have burgers and hot dogs and ready for the summer. But regarding chia, we look as baking innovation, we love to look at rheology. And whether or not it's a cake batter, whether or not it's a dough, we have mechanical energy putting everything together to create a dough that can process through your equipment. So speed and the demand for bread, it's good to be efficient. And one particular ability of chia that we observed was the ability to really relax the dough, change the dough rheology and high speed, making it less stressful going through the type of divider, what we call in baking. And often at that speed, can you imagine the dough goes through a lot of stress. So the chia can help relax, and it's not as tight as gluten. And in some cases, I would say it can replace some amount of gluten, but it has to be like anything in research and development, tested and validated. But from our early evaluation, we saw a lot of benefits to really change dough rheology as a clean label versus using ingredients that might be more processed and therefore, are on the list right now to be removed. So I think some potential and its ability to bind water really helps, potentially to help with the moisture staying longer into your products during the product's coats.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, the thing that, the consumer thinks of with chia is sort of that chia pudding, the chia, viscosity. And it sounds like, that is a critical, functional property that you work with. And again, like you said, through, sophisticated experimentation, but, the right formulas. And also responding to market demand. I mean, saying, we're in bun season, I think that that's incredibly important, is sort of reacting to the reality of where we stand in time and space and what the needs are in the market space. It really speaks to the idea of having to be in, thinking bigger than just your area, but where do I fit in the whole picture of bakery? Well, that must be one of the things, but are there other surprises that customers think of when they begin working with you with chia ingredients or asking questions? I mean, they might come in the door for fiber, or Richard, they might consult you for making a better for you end result. Maybe Belén, to speak to this, anything that they're surprised about when they're working with chia ingredients?
Yes, and actually, well, we experienced this with Richard when we first introduced the ingredient to him, and he was completely surprised about all the functionalities. Of course, as we are the suppliers, we depend on the customer feedback, right? This is the interesting thing about chia. That I always say this is like the bless and the curse of the ingredient, because some people don't expect to have such a versatile ingredient, and later on, they see that as an advantage. I mean, I can use it to increase the texture. I can use it to increase the fiber content. There's so many things that can come from chia in different ways, in different dosages, in different ways of using it, like mixing or making synergies with other ingredients as well. So it's quite interesting to see how the own customer explores chia in different ways, and they even through that process discover new functionalities that we didn't even know before. And that's the way of working as well with Richard, like trying to do different experiments, of course, trying to solve different pains from an industrial perspective, but also from a nutritional or functional perspective, because some people think that you might follow one path or the other, right? But in chia, you're able to provide both, and that's the main advantage here that I see, especially for the water binding, for the water retention, to offer a baker a solution that will allow them to add extra water to the system. That translates in better yield, in extra dough. So those are benefits that are very crucial for a baker.
Richard, any real life examples from that in the bread and roll space? What was your experimentation, in terms of inclusion among other ingredients, or, when you first sort of came to working with chia as one of the baking ingredients that you bring to the customer?
Well, I'll refer back to what you said earlier, with sort of it's synergy between other ingredients that makes it work. So my belief, as many years in the industry doing what I do, it never works with one solution. There's no miracle ingredient. The miracle ingredient bakers are working with is called wheat. It's one ingredient to transform. Then we add other ingredients to facilitate, as what we're discussing, breads and rolls. How do you make your bread and roll line easier? So working with ingredients like chia, because of its high ability to absorb water, it's sometimes good to think based on the amount you're going to use, to maybe pre-think or put a strategy around a process of how you incorporate chia into your formulation. So go contact, either myself or Belén through understanding, how do I use chia in my formulation? Because with new ingredients, novel ingredients, which when I started the bakery industry, the joke is that was the chia pet. And everybody still think it's a chia pet that you buy online. So in the 800 commercial late at night, people have seen. but chia is beyond that. So now, as a functional ingredient for industrial, remember, it's like how you use it. The best is communicate. I think you have great people around the table to help you out and guide you. But and that would be the best. It's because it's unique, and being unique, it's not any other ingredient. So it's best to talk to the people who've done it. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice, certainly. And I think that, like you, I mean, I still have a chia pet. It's not sprouted at the moment. I have it hiding in my storage. But it's easy to think of chia, but then the what you learn, and then you learn from both the experimentation, but talking to people who have worked with it, I think seems an interesting and an important place to sort of have that velocity and speed that you were talking about before of making it happen in and among other ingredients. I'm going to broaden the lens in just a moment, but the last sort of question on chia specifically that I wanted to ask you about was about, well, I found it fascinating about the sort of principle of how water binds. I understand chemistry, but how the water binding property helps with either the removal of other ingredients in a bakery roll or bread, or extending a shelf life. That was something that just completely escaped my consideration. I was focused on the nutrition and, of course, some of the other pieces there. But how does water absorption, or what do you see when you're putting it into bread and rolls, and for manufacturers to consider about supporting moisture or texture and shelf life and those kinds of things when it comes to chia?
Well, it depends on the application, of course. It depends on if it is conventional, gluten-free, of course, whole grain, whatever. But I see that is the main characteristic or feature that the customer or the baker appreciates, not only for the yield, right, but also because it is so much easy to include in a formulation for them, and instantly see an increase in the moisture of the breadcrumb after some days, right? They still see, for example, in gluten-free, which we know there are highly complex formulations because you don't have the gluten present there, right? And in order to achieve a bread that is soft, that is appealing for the customer, having an ingredient such as chia fiber, that it will extend the shelf life, that it will increase the resistance as well of the cutting resistance of the bread, and it will make it more workable. That's what impressed them the most, and also what they see as a motivation to keep including it in further references and explore it. Like as Richard said before, like there are so many factors in bakery that you need to have in mind in order to achieve a consistency, fast, speed in production, yield, and whatever. That having solutions that will help you in both universes or spaces, it's a huge advantage.
Seems like one of those areas where understanding the behavior early can help avoid challenges or overcome some of the other hurdles that may be of consideration. Thinking broader, Richard, when formulators think about consistency from like batch to batch of a product, what should they be paying attention to? What are some things that you put out front that they need to be considering?
Well, what I preach every day is having a right, proper flour to start with, and the unfortunate situation we're in for bakers is it's very difficult to control, and because of the high demand, there is variation. So, an ingredients like chia can be an extra ingredient that are often added, like adding malt to a flour. Adding chia could help create a certain absorption rate, because one of the big thing that varies with wheat flour is often the absorption. And the way chia controls water, and again, for those interested, now I'm curious, is between covalent hydrogen bonds and the way it holds on the water. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Lang, who has his PhD in water and water activity, always intrigued me of certain ingredients, which chia is one, that can really entrap water differently. So think of it as a tool again to help. There again, we're in the tip of innovation. We're talking about innovation. Do we have all the solutions? No, but I do believe for people willing to invest the time, they'll find a lot of cost-saving initiatives. And on top of it, it's a fiber, as Belén said. It's not an ingredient that says modified something. So a lot of advantages. It's again, we're recommending. I'm talking because I've done the work, so I hope people will get motivated to try new ingredients.
Yeah, I hear having a knowledgeable partner, and I'd love to hear what you have to say.
For sure. Now, also, Richard, that we have been discussing this before, that it also retains water, which is also incredible. It doesn't only absorb it, but it retains it and keep it after baking. So avoid any losses after the thermal process is also interesting to explore when you're doing pastries or any like soft baked goods. It's also important.
And I always say, having learned water and having done products such as the U.S. military with 3-year shelf life, then I would have said, yeah, but you have to be careful because you don't want to, some people have very controlled water level, big target to shelf life issues with water activity. But again, regardless of that, it's an ingredient that has ways for cost saving, meaning you can bulk and put extra water and keep it there and not lose it, which is what we're battling, right? It's moisture management at the end of the day. Shelf life is.
I feel like there's a bigger statement about humans and shelf life stability in water also.
We need water too, right? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So do products.
Yeah. Well, I think that consistency is often, in breads and rolls, like it's sort of invisible until it's totally visible, right? I mean, it's exactly. Like, everything looks great on your counter, your loaf of bread, until the next day it's, turning and it's very obvious to you. I'm curious, what advice, if a bakery team is either coming to you or interested in exploring chia for the first time, among, the ingredients or, sort of dabbling in the space for whatever reason of entry, whether it's nutrition or intrigued by its water retention, where would you recommend they start? And of course, a good partner is a good place to start, but is there a specific entry point in utilizing it or including it as part of a recipe for development?
Well, if you allow me to start, Richard, I will say that at least from Benexia team, we always recommend testing smaller amounts first to see, of course, how the ingredient will behave in the system before scaling up the dosage. That often gives customer like a very clear idea of any potential adjustments needed for both the remaining ingredients in the formula and the manufacturing process. And of course, avoid or reduce the risk of having a failed first trial, which is always good. Also from our experience to support them during those trials. It's great. I mean, it's a key advice.
Seems helpful because it seems, many teams can be interested, but, having practical, like what's my entry point? So as sort of a final question, I thought that, having two experts like yourselves who are living it day in and day out, I'm curious, looking ahead, what trends are you watching most closely when it comes to bakery innovation for breads and rolls? Like, what are you curious about? What are you interested in? And what are you seeing, I suppose? And you don't have to answer those as three, but just in general, what trends are you paying attention to and seeing? How about Richard first?
All right. Well, trends, as the name baking innovation, that's our bread and butter. We do a lot of work with chia, with protein, and we find synergies and way to more replace ingredients. So from the early statement from Belén, yes, clean label, there's tons of opportunities. And again, it's the synergy that we create, just as now all of us here discussing chia. And from there, of course, it goes to what I call sub-trends, what's going to be like focused on protein or keto or fiber. Those are, being very hot, which chia can fit both protein and the fiber category. So it's, it's not a concentrate by any mean, but it does provide extra nutrition overall as a functional ingredient. And I'm seeing a lot of demand for craft baking, meaning a lot of craft flour that people will go and use. It's similar to, it's funny, it's something we see in France, that I grew up being French, and the markets are sort of reversed now between Europe, where now in Europe they want a potato roll, which is very American, and burger buns. And in the US, we want brioche and croissants. And so we're seeing more of an artisanal demand for certain products, and shifting the market where people, like the shape to be different of the bread, to be more of a boule versus to be in the bread pan, sliced like the sliced bread. So consumers are looking for different flavors and different ideas. Similarly, that the brewing industry went through back in the 70s, where people wanted more of a craft batched, sort of the nice words, less ingredients, and they would rather read chia than polysorbate 8512 on the back of a packaging.
Yeah, I'm 100% aligned with Richard. That's also what I'm seeing currently. Like, for example, the fiber enrichment, which is the trend that is growing very fast with the GLP-1 introduction as well, to the weight management. Everyone is looking for increasing fiber and protein in their diets, and sometimes it's hard to do that. But also in my case, which I'm closely working with Europe. There are a lot of regulations going on as well, that are aiming to restrict certain nutrients classified as critical, like sugar, saturated fats, and salt. And they're also restricting marketing as well, products that contain those nutrients. So manufacturers are being forced to fortify ingredients with positive nutrients such as protein and fibers to improve the overall nutritional score, and to be able to advertise freely the products. So that, more than a trend, it will be like some sort of instruction that they will start to apply to their products. So that's important to keep an eye on those, especially for, the bakery industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. It sounds like the future isn't about choosing one thing again. It's about performance and nutrition and meeting regulations so that you can market the products and find ways to deliver on all of those at once. So certainly,
and still meet the demand.
What's that?
And still meet the demand of high speed and having customers getting their buns and rolls at the grocery store. Yeah,
they want it all.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Gladly, we have solutions today.
Yeah, clearly, baking innovation isn't about chasing the trends, even though I asked you what you see as sort of the future, but finding those solutions, like you just said, Richard, helping the products perform and meet those applications, meet the demands of speed and support, the business goals ultimately of the manufacturer and the brand over time. Well, I am so grateful for this conversation. I'd love to hear from our audience if there are some questions today. Please feel free to add questions in the chat. If you already have, I'm going to take a quick look at those, and we'll use our remainder of our time to address some of those. As I mentioned before, anything that we missed today, we can follow up with you after today's call. So one question so far, one of my customers, and I'm going to read this to get this right. One of my customers will replace a barley protein with another protein. The target is to bind less water and still have texture properties and also protein content. Is the Chia 435 an option? The final products are protein rolls and a protein baguette. So right in our sweet spot today, rolls and breads. So is the Chia 435 an option? What would you recommend, both of you, from your perspective on this idea of replacing a protein with another protein?
Well, I would say yes, but not all protein are created equal. So R&D and testing is needed. And please, in those conversation, as you're thinking about it, open the conversation to people either at Benexia or myself. Would be happy to guide you and to show you how to better implement or bring a new protein into your formulation.
Yes, for sure. Again, always start testing smaller amounts to see how the ingredient behaves, but also as well have a very well detailed objective on what it's the main purpose of the project, like which are the features that you want to maintain, which are the ones that you're able to change as well, because some other customers have or work with a very restrict product brief, and including or reformulating always comes with changes. So that's also a very important advice, as Richard said, like not all the proteins behave the same way, but also in this particular case, when we're speaking about chia, you will have also fiber. So you will probably will perceive some other functionalities that will probably be new to that current product. So it's important to test and to explore.
Belén, if I'm not mistaken, the person was asking about the Chia 435, but would this be a conversation that then would lend itself also to the Chia protein 125, or is that a different conversation altogether?
I mean, for sure, it depends on, for example, the protein content they're looking for, all these different aspects on the product brief. We can evaluate it and even brought up a combination of the two powders or just the Chia 435, the fiber concentrate, if it is suitable for what they're looking for. So yeah, for sure.
Thank you. On the next question, what kind of application can chia fiber be used in for gluten-free baking? So we're into that gluten-free space, which has different names. It's not the same trend as it used to be, but it's still very prominent, I know, among consumers.
Well, I'll speak first. It's something that realistically, it's amazing product. I made some crackers yesterday using corn flour, whole corn flour with chia, the 435. Added water, put some sourdough into it, and I made crackers. And the way I was able to sheet the dough and to really extend it, similarly to gluten, that to me is really fascinating, and it's clean label. And I've seen it happen in gluten-free, because gluten-free is all about building a starch network versus a starch matrix versus a gluten network in real bread. So it's really water being balanced, and chia is really a workhorse when it comes down to gluten-free. For those who have not tried it in gluten-free, I highly recommend it. You'll be very pleased.
Thank you.
100% aligned. Most of our customers, for example, from Italy, from industries, very well-positioned industries that have tested chia fiber and gluten-free, they're absolutely amazed. And not only for the rheological properties, but also because it helps them get an appearance of a whole grain product, which we always see that gluten-free are very wide. There needs to be resembled to conventional products, but sometimes that gives the restriction of using very white, even bleached ingredients, which of course are very away from the natural space. So bringing chia into the formula will give them these homemade appearance as well, which is always positive.
Oh, that's an interesting observation. Also, it brings that natural space.
Look.
So the last question, I think, and then we'll just wrap here and let everyone have wonderful dreams of baked goods for the rest of their day. It's a very practical question. What ratio of chia flour would you suggest in a recipe for rolls, for example, or where to start? Because what I've heard, and I know that baking is chemistry, but what I heard is start small if you're making swap-ins or you're making revisions. But what would you recommend as a ratio for rolls?
I'll start of what I would do for manufacturer. I would, not knowing every line, so I'll give a range that is a wide range, but at least it's safe for everybody. And in R&D always starts low. So start at 0.5% based on baker's percent. And for those who don't know, baker's percent is based on the total amount of flour used in your recipe or formulation. So 0.5%, maybe up to 2%. But remember, as you're increasing it, I highly recommend for you to increase the water similarly. That's why it's difficult to, and you at least can triple to quadruple your water intake. So if you put 0.5% of chia, that means you have to put 2% of water on top to compensate. And as you add water, then you have to change your mix time. So that's why it's not as easy as giving a ratio, because if people try it, it doesn't work, and they'll be, oh, it doesn't. But sometimes maybe you're not mixed properly. And as you increase water in an ingredient, you might have to increase your mix time in most cases when you have extra water. So again, baking is about sharing, ask questions. And if you don't know, we know people who do.
Fantastic.
100%.
I love that. Baking is about sharing. Maybe I'll end on that note, if you'll permit me, Belén, unless you want to add something else.
No, perfect. That's the common advice.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Richard, Belén, and to everyone who joined us today. A special thank you, to our esteemed panelists. You'll be able to hear them again, and especially for sharing your expertise and insights. We hope today's discussion provided useful ideas and practical considerations. We got down to the nitty-gritty on a few things as well, that you can bring back to your own formulation and product development work. A recording of today's webinar session will be available following, and we'll have some additional resources and contact information. This was, again, the first session in our 3-part series on reformulating baked goods with chia, and we hope you'll join us again on August 19th as we turn our attention to flatbreads and tortillas, and then September 23rd as we explore cookies and sweet baked goods. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us. And we look forward to continuing the conversation and look forward to seeing you also at an upcoming session. Thank you all. Be well.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Richard. It was a pleasure.
Belén. Thank you, Wendy. Likewise. Thank you.